Eugene hit it out of the park, as we preachers sometimes say. That doesn't seem very spiritual. But you know what I mean. That was a rockin' sermon. It was great. If you missed it, it's online. You can hear it again. But it is really a delight to be back with you at St. Andrews after some good time away, made even more delightful by Luke 15. Not every Sunday, not every week do I get to study a part of Scripture that is my favorite, one of my keystone texts that I love so much. Luke chapter 15 to me, I think, it's really the gospel in miniature for me. I love Luke 15. We've got lost sheep, we've got a lost coin, and if we keep reading in chapter 15, past where our text cuts off today, we'll have a lost son, or maybe two lost sons, depending on how you interpret the prodigal son story. These are great parables. I love them. I think I love them because we all know what it is to lose something. I can relate to it. These texts are so relatable even now. Lost loves, lost fortunes, lost moments, lost at sea, lost causes, lost souls, nothing left to lose, told to get lost, lost sleep over it. All is not lost. We know loss. We all have lost something. We all know what it is to search and find something that we value. We know what it means to be lost. We know what it means to be found. That's the message today. Not only do we know what it's like to lose something and search for it and find it, we also know what it is like to feel lost and to be found by God. Do you know that you have been searched for? That God has swept the house looking for you with great urgency. And then when God found you, God called together all of God's friends and threw a party rejoicing because God found you. We're so valuable that when we had started to slip away, the one who searches for us and loves us and cares for us and values us came searching to find us in Jesus Christ. And when that one found us, that one threw a really big party to celebrate. We're at that party right now. That's what Sunday mornings are, a party of God's people celebrating that we have been found by God. This is a feast of celebration and rejoicing. It's a big party for us who were lost and searched for and found and restored to our rightful spot where we belong to God. Sometimes this is the very thing that we have actually lost, this sense of belonging to God. That's often the thing that we are searching for, this knowledge that God values us, that we belong to God, that we have a place in this universe, and we belong. So much gets in the way of us knowing that we can lose that knowledge of how we belong to God, how God searched and searched and searched and swept and looked for us and found us. One of the roadblocks to knowing that we have been joyfully found by God is our own human tendency to do a couple of things, like accuse, resent, grumble, be petty. Nobody here knows what I'm talking about, right? Nobody. You know, I wonder why we get so lost in petty hostilities when we can choose instead to be found and celebrate and rejoice at that party that God is throwing for us. But I think I have an idea why we do it. I know why I do it. Drama, which is what being petty really stirs up, right? Drama is delicious. It tastes so good. Give me a knife and fork. Let's get into it. Let's point the finger. Let's accuse. Let's stir up some drama and be petty. Isn't it delicious? Isn't it exciting when we've got all that to grumble about? It's delicious to point the finger, to blame, to accuse, to hold on tight to grudges and resentments. And we've been taught, quite incorrectly, But we've been taught, not perhaps in words. My mother never said, hold on to resentments and grudges. A teacher never told me to point the finger. A pastor never said to blame or accuse. And yet I watched all of these leaders in my life, wonderful people, do these things from time to time. And as a leader in a community, I am sure you have seen me do these things too. We have all been taught and taught one another quite incorrectly that the way to protect ourselves is to blame somebody else, right? The way to be sure that we are right is to say somebody else is wrong. That's how you know you're right? Say they're wrong. We do this. These are false teachings, false ways of grasping for that belonging that is already ours in God. These are hostilities. These are hostilities that swirl under the surface and end up leaving us feeling so lost. Some scribes and some Pharisees saw Jesus and his peasant followers fraternizing with tax collectors and sinners. And let's remember, tax collectors are greedy lowlifes in the scriptures, right? When you see tax collector and sinner, you're thinking those are the people we aren't supposed to be around. And they're coming near to Jesus. And Jesus does not tell these tax collectors and sinners to get lost, does he? He doesn't do that at all. Instead, he turns to those who are grumbling, and he tells them a couple of parables. Some of those scribes and Pharisees grumbled, became petty. They were harboring resentment over how they wanted to be near to Jesus, but they couldn't get any closer because they didn't want to rub shoulders with those tax collectors and sinners. They could not stand to bear that. And anyways, why are all these people listening to Jesus? He doesn't even keep the Sabbath correctly. Why is he so interesting and smart and popular, and they're not? He's not even teaching in the temple. What's going on here? Can you just hear them grumbling? Grumble, grumble, grumble. Hostility, pettiness, and more grumbling. Here's some really good news for the Pharisees, for us who might grumble and get petty from time to time. Here's some really, really good news this morning. Jesus doesn't tell them to get lost either. He tells them a parable, a story to puzzle over, a story that softens those places where we are petty and instead replaces it with curiosity, a holy curiosity, creating space for us to learn and grow. And in those parables, in that story, perhaps some grumbling Pharisees and scribes could hear what we're hearing today, that we are valued by God. And even when we are lost to petty grudges, even when our joy is lost to long resentments, even then, God searches to find us and restore us because we belong to God. And we are God's, and God will find us. And when we settle into that sense of belonging and know that that's our true place, we can participate in that joy-filled party that God is throwing for you, for me, for each of us, even those of us who sin and are petty and carry around a couple of grudges. The party's for all of us. We all belong. That's what we are called to lose, though, that reliance on that easy sense of righteousness by way of pointing out someone else's flaw. It's too easy. It's too easy. The tendency in us to blame rather than accept the world and other people and all of our relationships for the complicated and intricate webs that they truly are. We can lose this tendency, this pattern of blame and resentments by acknowledging, first and foremost, that we are not God. And as human beings, we have limits. We hate to admit it, don't we? We don't want to have limits. We cannot make others do everything we want them to do. There are limits to our power, limits to our control, thank God. And we can lose a resentment by acknowledging that resenting someone for something that happened back in the past is crazy. It makes us crazy. It's already done. We can't make them be different. We can't make ourselves be different. We can stand here today and say that we would have preferred that somebody else did something differently. We would have preferred that we made a different choice. And we can acknowledge that, stand here today, and commit to living more according to our values in the future, but we can't make the past different. We can acknowledge what matters to us about whatever it is and move forward. Blame and resentments and being petty, these tendencies are often spiritually lazy shortcuts around our deeply held values. They're ways that we stay distracted instead of digging into what we really value and how we're really called to live with one another. We get lost all the time in petty cycles of blame and resentment. And sometimes these cycles lead us to being outwardly hostile or even violent with one another. Jesus offers us another way entirely. Jesus offers us a way forward, a spiritually rigorous and freeing way to live better without the hostility and violence being perpetuated in our relationships and in our community. God came searching for us. Yes, us. Us, a people stuck in blame, hiding behind our grumbling and our resentments. And God searched for us. And in the presence of Jesus, God found us and swept us up from a dark, hidden corner and restored us to God's gracious and welcoming presence. That's what Jesus is still doing. With a broom, sweeping around this world, pulling us in, sweeping us in, still present, offering this sweep you up in love finding that we all long for, inviting us into restored relationships where we dare to lose the petty grumbling and move more fully into a daily experience of God's grace. We always have the choice to make. That's the difficult thing. God finds us, and we have a choice. Will we choose to trust in our own human pettiness that just leaves us feeling more lost? Or will we allow ourselves to really participate in this big party? That party where God is celebrating that we all belong, that we belong to God, right here, just as we are, a work in progress. Now, I love a good party, as many of you know, and I know that you love a good party too. So I know where we all want to be. Here's the challenge. It's a challenge for me, maybe for you too. Can I overcome my addiction to notions of my rightness, notions of being in control, notions of protecting myself by staying hurt? Can I overcome my addiction to these ideas so I can go to that party? By the grace of God, I will overcome these challenges by the grace of God. And by the grace of God, you will too. The party is simply too good for any of us to miss.
Amen. Amen.